Have you ever felt that today was the worst day? Living in a stressful modern society, it's understandable to feel that way sometimes. I completely understand that feeling. But did you know that there was not just a bad day, but the worst year in human history? That year was 536 AD. Numerous scientists and historians all agree no year was worse than 536. But what exactly happened in that year? 536 was a year in which a series of unfortunate events occurred in such a miraculous sequence that humanity spiraled into a path from which it couldn't easily escape. Today, we will explore why 536 AD is considered the worst year for human survival, looking at the conditions in Europe and Asia at the time, and examining modern research. What you will discover is a disaster that seems unimaginable by today's standards. Let's embark on a journey to peer into this dark age. This story begins around 1500 years ago, in 536 AD. Music at that time, regions such as present-day Greece, Turkey, and Egypt formed the Eastern Roman Empire. There was a historian named Procopius, who, along with his boss, noticed something unusual during a trip to the island of Sicily. It was cloudy and dark outside, all year long. Many others also noticed the strange weather.
It's cloudy again today. Something's been weird lately, don't you think?
Yeah, it's been cloudy for too long. I haven't seen proper sunlight in ages.
Speaking of which, I heard that crops aren't growing well this year.
Because the sun's not coming out.
Really? What on earth is going on?
Conversations like this were happening all over the city. Apart from Procopius, another figure also left records. Michael, who was a scribe of the Eastern Roman Empire. He wrote that there were only about 4 hours of daylight each day, and even then, the sunlight was extremely weak. Everyone at the time had given up hope that the sun would ever shine brightly again. With such feeble sunlight, fruits couldn't ripen, and wine, which depends on sunlight to develop its flavor, turned sour. This abnormal weather persisted for at least a year. Scientists have finally discovered the cause of the mysterious weather in 536 AD. It was volcanic ash from a massive eruption. You might wonder, what does volcanic ash have to do with bad weather? When a large-scale volcanic eruption occurs, ash clouds fill the sky. This ash blocks sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface, leading to prolonged overcast skies and terrible weather. The darkness that Procopius and Michael described was due to sunlight being blocked by volcanic ash. This ash not only dimmed the world, but also had devastating effects on plants and humans. For example, plants, which need sunlight for photosynthesis, struggled to grow. As a result, crop yields decreased, and people began to fight over food, leading to uprisings and starvation. Furthermore, because sunlight was blocked, the global temperature dropped by 1.6 to 2.5 degrees Celsius. This further hindered plant growth. The people's suffering didn't end there. The lack of sunlight also led to a new disease spreading. Normally, when people are exposed to sunlight, their bodies produce vitamin D. However, during this period, the lack of sunlight caused a vitamin D deficiency, weakening the immune systems of the population. No one at the time had immunity to this new disease, and it spread rapidly from the lower classes to the royal family. The disease started with swelling in the hands, and in severe cases, it caused swelling in the feet, pus-filled sores, and even death. This new disease was a plague, one of the most feared epidemics in human history. It spread widely throughout the Roman Empire, with Constantinople being particularly affected. The city of Constantinople became overwhelmed by the smell of death. As the number of plague victims became too great to manage, bodies were everywhere, and without proper burial facilities, many of the dead were simply thrown into the sea. This alone shows the horrific conditions of the time. But there were even worse methods used to deal with the plague. Conversations like this were heard in the streets.
Let's just get it over with.
Ugh, I really don't want to do this.
Who would want to? You know, people who do this job always end up getting sick. That's terrifying. We could be next. Maybe we should consider quitting.
As I mentioned earlier, the Roman emperor ordered healthy people to remove the bodies of plague victims. As a result, Even the healthy were exposed to the disease, and the plague spread faster, leading to an unprecedented number of deaths. It's estimated that around 50 million people died from the plague. The combination of volcanic ash blocking the sun, leading to famine, and the spread of the plague wreaked havoc on people's lives in the Roman Empire. But the volcanic ash didn't only affect the Roman Empire, it also reached Asia around 536. Strange weather patterns began to emerge in China. There are records from the 6th century of yellow ash falling from the sky, so much so that it could be scooped up by hand. This was only the beginning of the abnormal weather.
It's cold these days, isn't it? Better not catch a cold. Wait, is that snow? Wow, it's beautiful.
But isn't it supposed to be summer right now?
Yeah, it is. What's going?
Historical records from the time mention frosts in midsummer, and reports of snow falling during the hottest months, as if the seasons had been reversed. Naturally, this abnormal weather greatly affected people's lives. For over 2 years, no crops could be harvested due to the extreme cold. In what is now Korea, around 70 to 80% of the population reportedly died from starvation. Even today, we occasionally hear about abnormal weather, but it's unimaginable for snow to fall in the summer. For the people of that time, this must have been a terrifying and inexplicable event. The volcanic eruption that caused these global weather disruptions is thought to have occurred in Central America. In modern-day El Salvador, the ash from this eruption spread to Europe and Asia, covering the sky and blocking sunlight, which caused global cooling for at least 10 years. This period is known as the Late Antique Little Ice Age, a time when it was extremely difficult for people to survive. Without sufficient sunlight, crops withered, and many people fell into famine and malnutrition, leading to the spread of disease. The eruption in Central America triggered weather anomalies around the world, dramatically changing the lives of people globally. Around the time of the eruption, the Roman Empire, under the leadership of Emperor Justinian, was trying to regain its former glory in Constantinople. However, due to the volcanic disaster in 536, famine and plague followed. This volcanic eruption truly altered the course of history, leading to a population decline of 35 to 55%. Justinian was unable to restore the empire to its former prosperity. If it hadn't been for the volcanic eruption and the plague, Justinian might have succeeded, and history could have been very different. The climate changes in 536 didn't only affect the Roman Empire. For example, the Moche civilization in Peru, which had advanced agricultural and fishing techniques, also suffered. Abnormal weather caused the sea temperature to rise, leading to a decline in fish populations. Additionally, floods destroyed the irrigation systems necessary for farming, severely impacting food production. The Moche civilization was dealt a heavy blow by these events. The volcanic eruption led to weather anomalies worldwide, causing plagues, population declines, and the collapse of civilizations. The year 536 AD truly marks a turning point in history. It wasn't until recently that we learned that 536 was the worst year in human history. In 2018, researchers at Harvard University set out to scientifically determine the worst year in history. Initially, they weren't specifically looking into the unusual weather of 536, but were studying changes in the monetary system in the 7th century, while analyzing volcanic particles from a glacier in Switzerland. For their research on the history of currency, they made a surprising discovery. A volcanic eruption in 536 had covered the skies with ash, leading to the worst year in history. This discovery came from volcanic particles found in the glacier. But there are other ways to learn about Earth's history as well. One method is by studying tree rings. Many people know that you can determine the age of a tree by counting its rings, but you can also learn about the climate of the time. For example, wider rings indicate good growth conditions, while narrower rings suggest less sunlight or rain. One researcher studied tree rings in Ireland and discovered a period of stunted growth in the mid-500s. When this finding was combined with the 2018 research at Harvard, It became clear that the Earth had experienced a massive disaster in 536 AD. Despite the terrible events that humanity faced, there are also signs of resilience. When the Harvard researchers were analyzing the ice cores they had collected for the climate study, they found traces of lead. This indicated that people were producing and using silver at the time, as silver was used for coins. This suggests that even during the dark times of 536, people were still trying to carry on with their economic activities. The increase in silver production shows that, despite the harsh conditions, people were resilient and the economy continued to function. From this, researchers concluded that no matter how bad things get, they can eventually improve. Even in what is often called the Dark Ages, people found ways to adapt and move forward. If I had been born in 536 AD, I would have likely looked up at the dark skies and sighed, despairing over the terrifying plague. I am truly glad to have been born in the modern age, and I feel a great deal of respect for the efforts of those who came before us. The history of the world is still full of mysteries. Let's continue exploring these mysteries together. Thank you for watching, and see you on our next journey.